Hey y'all, welcome back to another build video. Today we are going to be bedding the port side stringer. The rear stringer in the boat. This is just a portion of one. So we've done a little prep work. Put you down, let you get a little look at what we did. So we got our stringer cut out. This is it right here. Alright, it's a piece of 3/4 inch Baltic birch that we sealed in resin. It's going to go down just like this. We've got a little brace right there so that whenever we get it set where we want, we can screw it together. And then I cut some little bulkheads because this stringer is slightly warped inward, so I want it to be as straight as possible. So I'm going to take this one right here, I'm going to stick it in between like that, get it squared up where it needs to be. I'm going to take this one and put it down here on the end, and I'm going to take those big 36-inch clamps that I've got, and I'm going to clamp it right here in the middle so it pulls it back straight. We'll let it cure like that, and then these bulkheads are probably going to end up staying. I'm probably going to glass those in just to keep it straight and true. So we got a little prep work left to do. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get everything cleaned up in here, get it wiped down with acetone, and then I'll be back whenever we start mixing up some resin. One thing I want to show you real quick, a little money saving tip. So whenever you use your buckets like this, it's really hard to clean them out after you're done. Like this squeegee, see, this is the one we used the last time. See, this stuff just peels right off. So if you take it and bend it like this, you can pop all this stuff off of here and you can reuse it. That way you don't have to keep buying squeegees and materials. And you can do the same thing with the cups. See, wipe it down and then look, just like new. You can do the same thing with these big mixing cups. You just squeeze them like this, and you should be able to get most, if not all, of this resin out of here. That way you can reuse your cups and save you a little bit of money. Because if you bought as many of these things as I did, you realize real quick it gets expensive. So we'll be back whenever we get ready to start mixing up some resin. Alright guys, we're back. We're gonna start mixing up some resin. Right here, all we got is some microspheres or polyfiber. This is the same, very similar to silica or fume silica, but it's not as light. So when you're mixing it, it doesn't fly around all in your face and stuff, but it accomplishes the same goal. I found that this is a little easier to work with. This is a little easier to mix in. So we've got our polyfiber for thickening, and then we've got some 1/4 ounce chopped strand fibers for strength. So we're gonna mix up, I believe, we'll mix up 32 ounces. That should be enough to do that stringer. The last time I mixed up 16 ounces and it wasn't near enough. Actually, what we'll do is I'll put 16 ounces in here, and then I'll mix up another 8, and that should do it. So I've got this other bucket here with a Ziploc in it. We're going to use this like a those cake bags. I forget what they call them, but we stick it in here, we mix it up real good, and we cut the end off of it, and we can get it exactly where we want it. So we'll go ahead and pour out our resin and put 16 ounces in here. All right, 16 ounces. I'll mix up another 8 in here. hang on to these little cups, guys. You can do a lot of this with just a few of them if you keep them clean. So we got 24 ounces of resin. So we're going to look at our catalyst recommended chart just to see what we need. So for 16 ounces at 1%, it's calling for 5 cc's. So we're going to mix it a little bit light so we have a little more working time with it. So we're going to mix up 7 cc's with it. We're going to go ahead and start thickening it. Just take it, and it takes a lot to get this thickened to the way you want it, or as we use it, like as we call it, peanut butter. And just get that in there, mix it around till you got a good consistency. And what you want is for this this resin to stick to your mixing stick without dripping or falling off. Mix up our polyfiber in here, get it good and mixed up, get all these clumps mixed in. And the longer you mix it, the more it'll soak in. It'll start out with some big chunks in there, but once they get soaked up with resin, they'll mix in okay. Now this is not the way to do it. This is a way to do it. I prefer to mix and get it thick before I catalyze it. That way I have as much working time with it as possible, because it's a little hot down here, so it likes to kick off fast on you. Add a little more. See that? That ain't thick enough. I'll put some more. The whole idea behind it is when you put it down, you want it to stay wherever it's at. And you take your time and you get it where you want it. You can come back with one of these squeegees like this. See, there's a curved radius on it. It's a 1/2 inch radius. So you run it down the side of whatever you're doing. That way you can establish your good radius so that it's a lot less sanding on the back side for you to lay your tabbing and get your stringers glassed in. That's what we're going to shoot for. It doesn't always come out perfect, but sometimes it's just good to be lucky, and I have yet to be lucky. So we'll try it again. Maybe today will be the day. This may not look like a lot of resin, guys, but this is a lot of resin. But when you're doing this with an uneven surface and you're trying to put a flat piece of wood on it, it takes a lot to fill in those little gaps. You don't want any air pockets underneath it, any chance for water to get underneath it. A little bit more. So we used over 16 ounces of poly fiber and 24 ounces of resin. It just kind of gives you an idea as to how much it takes. It takes a lot to get it thick, but once you get it that way, you can stick it where you want it and it won't sag, it won't run. It'll cure right there. Almost. See that? That's what you want. And this still may not be thick enough, but we're gonna add a little bit more just for good measure. Go ahead and put my gloves on before I get this all over myself. You don't have to use latex gloves. You can use these little vinyl gloves. They're cheaper. But I will tell you, if you're using acetone to wipe it down, it will melt these gloves. So it's okay to use it with resin. It won't penetrate it, but I wouldn't recommend using it with acetone, because then you'll be peeling the glove off your hand in pieces. Ask me how I know. If you're not happy with how your resin is mixing, you feel like there's still a bunch of clumps in it, just walk away from it. Leave it alone. It'll suck up with resin. Just walk away from it. You can come back to it, and it should be thickened up really nice. But you want a good smooth consistency. See how it's just sticking on the stick like that? That's what you want. You don't want it to sag at all. For good measure, I'm gonna add a little bit more, because I don't want it to go anywhere when I put it under the flange. All right, so that's roughly 20 ounces of poly fiber, 24, something like that. You can buy that stuff at Fiberglass Supply Depot. It's I bought it in a 10-pound box, and it came with a lot, so it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it's so light that it comes in a really big bag. If you're doing a project this in depth, I would recommend it. It's better to have more than you need, not enough. All right, so now we got the consistency close enough to what we want. Well, maybe not. We're gonna add these chopped strand fibers for reinforcement. All this does is just give it a little bit of strength so it's not brittle. If you put a lot of resin in one spot, it can become brittle on you. You don't want that. Still not happy with it. We're gonna add a little more chopped strand. I'm gonna add a little bit more poly fiber. That should do it. Yeah, there we go. That is mo better. may have been too much. Oh well, be okay. There we go. I think it's safe to say it's thick enough when it's almost breaking your mixing stick, trying to stir it up. That is better. So, we'll go through our little mental checklist here, make sure we got everything we need, everything is where we want it. But we got this mixed up, it's not catalyzed yet. We got a stringer in the boat, got everything wiped down with acetone. We got our braces in place. Got our clamps in place. Got this, we need our pair of scissors. Recommend getting a good pair of scissors. Spend your little money, don't be cheap, because those little cheap ones will not cut through that thick fiberglass mat. But don't expect to keep them after this project. You can clean them up with acetone, but for whatever reason it sucks all the oil out of it and makes them rust. But you don't want any oil on it when you're cutting, so it just kind of is what it is. So we said we're going to mix up 7 cc's. Take this, I'm gonna squeeze it. I got a little measuring cup on it. I'm gonna go a little bit over 5. Should be good enough. Pour it in there. Now we're on a time clock. You're on a time clock, but make sure that you get this mixed up really well. Because if you do not, you will have a mess on your hands whenever it all sets up and you got a bunch of spots that aren't completely cured. It's going to be hard to stir like this. If you have a drill mounted mixer for paint, you can use that. I have one, I just forgot it at my house. So what I like to do, I get it half pretty well mixed up in the bucket like this. Come over here, I'm gonna pour it into my Ziploc. Comme ça. One thing about this resin, guys, is if you have it in a bucket like this, it's going to kick off faster in the bucket than it will if you get it spread out where you want it. So just leave that, let it drop. We can reuse that later. We'll take our Ziploc here. It's all over here. Scissors ready. Get all this pushed down. Push all the air out of the bag. And I like to mix it up like this just to make sure that it's good and catalyzed all the way through. Take it and just run it down like that. piping bag. That's what they call it, a piping bag. My memory's not the greatest, guys, so bear with me. All right, so now we're gonna take it like this, twist the end. Now what we need to do is get all this out of the way. Get this moved over, out of the way. We'll cut the end off here, like that. Take it and just twist it, and it'll come out. It's okay if you get a little more in an area and you anticipate you're going to come back with your squeegee and smooth it all out. Looks like that should be good. We'll set this off to the side. Get this set where we want it. Alright. We got it about where we want it. I'm going to take this spacer bulkhead here, run it down like that. Kind of get it halfway where you want it. And guys, we're not building a piano here, so you can stick it where you want it and then come back and fix whatever you think you need to fix later on. We'll get our little bulkhead set in right here. Get our clamps on it. Doing this by yourself, it can be challenging at times, but just take your time, don't freak out, you can get it. Alright, we got that clamp where we want it. We're going to tighten it down. We got this bulkhead where we want it. I'm going to put this clamp right here in the center to pinch that inside, because it's kind of bowing outward right there. So we'll stick this here. We'll pick this up to the top so it don't get bonded in place. We'll squeeze this in a little bit so it looks close enough to where we want it. That looks like it may be a little too much. Looks pretty straight to me. Now the fun part. So, got it where you want it. You take your little piping bag, come on both sides of it, like this. Run down the edge. It's okay if you make a little mess with it. You come back and sand it off later. So, just running this down in this little corner like that. Okay. And get all this resin out of here so we don't have any waste. We'll do the same thing on the inside right there. You see, if you look at it, it's kind of a brown color now. That's how you know it's properly catalyzed. If it stays pink, then it's probably not catalyzed properly. But when it starts to turn brown on you, like a darker shade of pink, you know it's right. So if you don't mix enough doing this, you can come back later on after you get all this laid up, and you can always add more. This is a laminating resin, so it's meant to be gone over the top of. So one thing I like to do before I waste my squeegee, I like to take my little mixing stick, that I used, come back and establish a decent radius with it. Just scrape it like this. Just try and get as smooth a transition as possible. And you can do it pretty good with a popsicle stick. You get a pretty good radius going. What this also does is fill a bunch of gaps so that you don't have any air pockets. Try to get it as smooth as possible. We're going to come back with our squeegee after this, and we are going to just level off the little high spots. We'll try to get all the little air pockets out. You don't want to see any gaps in your radius. This is going to give you the strongest bind you can possibly get with fiberglass, if there's no air pockets in it. We got that. We'll come back with our squeegee. Just gonna feather out these little high edges. That way we don't have any sharp points when you're trying to lay up. I like neighbors having a little quarrel over there. Welcome to Louisiana. Just gonna smooth these edges out. It'll save you a lot of sanding down the road. Because the worst part about doing a job like this is all the sanding. Hands down, the worst part. Sanding, grinding, the rest of it's fairly easy. You just gotta pay attention to what you're doing. You can go back and lay glass over the top of this if you want to. I prefer not to because I don't like it to move around on me when I'm trying to get my glass laid up. I like it to be a good stable platform I can push on, get all the air pockets out. But you do what works for you. This is what works for me, so that's what I'm doing. All right. Now, all we got to do is leave it alone, let it set up. I'll give you a little walk around, let you see what we got. So after we do this, we're going to come back and sand the radiuses out just to make sure that we got a good flat surface. But you look down in there, it goes all the way down like that. Try to get it as clean and flat as possible. Get your radius created. We got it tied into the transom there. It goes all the way down. That's what you want. This is the one that we did the other day. We got a little cleaning up to do here, but it's because of how I had it braced up. But all in all, it came out good. It's good and solid. So that's where we at. We'll be back probably tomorrow once it cures and we can start building the knees or the gussets for the transom. I believe I'm gonna go, I haven't decided if I'm gonna go on the inside or on the outside of these stringers and tie into them for the outside piece. I may go outside of them and then just put another piece on top of it so it's an 1.5 inches thick going up. It'll go up to about right there, and then I'll take a flat piece of 2x4 and run it from this corner across the top of the knees to the other corner and glass all that into the transom. And then we're going to come back, sand all this down, wipe it down with acetone, and then we'll start tabbing the stringers into the transom. And after every layer we tab into it, we're going to come back with another big sheet over the transom to tie it in. Then we'll lay another layer tabbing, then another big sheet. We're going to do it all the way down. And then once we get these good and secure, we'll put our bulkheads in. That's the one for the back side of the fuel tank. And once we get the bulkhead put in, I can come in and reinforce the whole tunnel system right there. So that's the plan going forward. Hope y'all are having a good one. We're making progress over here. So we'll see y'all next time.